You and I Are Polar Opposites continues to be a high point this anime season, begging the question, is it possible to be too charming and sweet? Early indications are a resounding no. As the episodes have gone along, the side characters are getting more and more screen time and depth. Nishi and Yamada's romance is in full swing, and something about Taira's pervasive melancholy tells me that he's due for a change of heart soon. But this show is not just throwaway fun. There's a thoughtfulness to how it approaches conflict and resolution that makes it stand out amongst all of the other romance anime. Specifically, You and I Are Polar Opposites handles miscommunication differently than everyone else. It's not that it doesn't happen, or that it disappears in an instant. Instead, this anime provides one of the most real and interesting depictions of how relationships actually work. And a lot of it revolves around a really simple idea. Characters actually talk to each other when there's a problem. Why does this work so well as a storytelling tool? And how does this show specifically mold those conversations to make them even more impactful? The first thing that jumps out to you about miscommunication in this show is the pace at which they get resolved after cropping up. It's really rare to see a misunderstanding stretch beyond the episode it first appears in. Look no further than the season premiere, when Suzuki and Tani hold hands while heading home. But the next morning, Suzuki denies her feelings to her friends. Already, we are blazing past normal romance anime pacing, where the hand-holding would more commonly come like 12 episodes in than at the very start. It would be no surprise to have this awkwardness drag out for a few episodes before Suzuki finally gets the courage to confront Tani. But that's not how this show rolls. Only 4-ish minutes of showtime passes between her miscommunication and screaming her confession to Tani. What I love about this is how understandable both sides of things are. You can feel the pressure Suzuki feels as her friends ask her about Tani, and how she wants to avoid putting him in an uncomfortable spot. But you can also equally understand how it looks to Tani, and why he'd be hesitant to believe that someone like Suzuki would want to be with him. The wall up between them is given proper weight, and the show embraces how hard communicating honestly can be sometimes. And yet, when things reach a breaking point, our characters must act. So it's not like the miscommunication doesn't carry major stakes. It's just that the show doesn't artificially drag things out for drama's sake. Instead, it embraces the joy of resolution, realizing that seeing friends and partners make up doesn't ever really lose its appeal. It's not just the pace at which this show resolves miscommunications, though. The way that they handle resolution is equally refreshing, and a lot of it revolves around the idea that communication is imprecise, especially about feelings. Episode 3 gives a great example of this. Tani overhears Suzuki talking about Sudaken, and how she likes guys with a cool aura to them. This makes Tani insecure, because he's obviously very different to this celebrity image that Suzuki is so enamored with. In the middle of the episode, he brings it up with her, and she does her best to understand and explain. This idea that we all like different parts of different people, and admire people and images differently, is really interesting, and is not one I've seen dug into a lot in romance anime, despite being something we can all relate to. But something I think is equally awesome is how Tani doesn't really get what she's saying. Suzuki does her best to explain, but it's hard to clear up misunderstandings like this, especially when you're also trying to assuage insecurity. As an audience, we saw earlier in the episode when she told Taira about how she also finds Tani cool for his self-confidence, but that doesn't come up here. And Tani can't exactly find the words to express that he wants to be cool to Suzuki. They're both being open and honest, and yet it's still hard to find complete resolution in one conversation. That's really cool to see depicted so deftly. The end of the episode finds more lasting resolution while still continuing to explore this idea. Suzuki visits Tani in the library, and they have a miscommunication when he's trying to be considerate of her time, but she interprets him as asking her to leave. It's a great table turn moment, where now she's insecure and overthinking things. However, this time they find resolution when Tani asks her to wait for him. This small miscommunication opens the door to how complicated expressing ourselves is, but also how sometimes it's the gesture that matters more than the specifics of what you say. On this walk home, Suzuki expresses how she wants to learn more about Tani and his tastes, and this is the real resolution to the conflicts of the episode. Language is imprecise, and it's the feelings behind the words that really matter. Love is about trust and understanding. With it, any conflict or miscommunication becomes trivial. Seeing this show embrace this philosophy is so awesome because it doesn't invalidate the feelings of our characters or make them less important. It just makes the resolution satisfying without being over-explained or cliché. You and I Are Polar Opposites rides a really fine line in how it handles miscommunication. It still relies on them for most of its conflicts and resolutions, setting up and overlapping them to create the mesh of its story. But how it handles them is really refreshing for the genre. First, it doesn't waste time reaching resolution. Not everyone is a Victorian character sitting in a big window lamenting the heartache of love. And luckily, these characters realize that the only way to find understanding is to get those feelings out in the open. Second, and equally important though, is how this show embraces the imprecision of communication. Characters do their best to address each other's concerns, but sometimes there's no magic words to fix something. Instead, it's about listening and loving the person who came to you with their problem. That's a really intricate idea, and one of the quieter parts of relationships that you don't see all the time in this genre. So, while the more lighthearted and fun parts of You and I Are Polar Opposites continues to make it a delight, how it handles this common romance anime conflict with such a nuanced and realistic approach is a huge part of what makes it more than just eye candy. And that ends today's episode of Love and Anime. I hope you enjoyed this one. The last Polar Opposites episode did great, and I have no shortage of things to say about this show. Anytime a show is this vibrant and funny, but manages to slip in some more unique perspectives on love and connection, it immediately grabs my attention. If you enjoyed the video today and like video essays about romance, anime, and romance anime, liking and subscribing helps a ton and will keep you in the loop, as does hitting the hype button on the mobile app. I'm Slam Anime, and I'll see you next time.